at the school, the emergency, would they have the ability to go and actually turn on their active enforcement and help out the federal revenue?
Yeah, and quite frankly, once they step into that role, then they are under the color of their office. And so they're acting as, if you will, an on-duty police officer.
Thank you. Okay. In terms of this amendment, this is one of the gun control group that came up when we talked about it, debated, and nobody's questioning our law enforcement. We all know that we need them, we support them, but it comes down to, do you really want to have that many guns possibly on campus? Just imagine outside the instances, and we know about the instances in which the worst thing happens. You want law enforcement to be there. Do you want a law enforcement officer talking to a teacher about his child's grade with a gun on his head? We're talking about duty. We're not in uniform. We're talking about duty. Do you want this person to be able to go to a high school basketball game or football game where he goes to the ride high with the ability to intimidate the crowd when they're all doing the law with a weapon on their side? I think that we know that we want to protect people, but I believe in this instance, as we're overstepping our boundaries, we need to actually resist this amendment.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Steve.
Carroll County and the young lady from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm really surprised at the level of questioning and contention we have on this bill. The question was just asked, do you really want that many guns on campus? And the answer to me is yes. I am a former active person in schools. I was former PTA president, I'm PTA president, school board president, PTA president. All these things that happen on campuses of elementary schools, college campuses, if we had some law enforcement officers there, off duty, maybe some of those things wouldn't have happened. In our schools in Carroll County, we have off-duty police officers all the time in our schools. They volunteer, they have flexible schedules. We have many police officers frequently at our schools. We welcome them there. And I think the good lady, Vice Chairman, made the point. They think they can carry their weapons now. In the law is in front of me. It says that they may not carry their weapons on school property in a gun-free zone. That's the law in the state of Maryland. We have gun-free zones in all of our schools in the state of Maryland, and off-duty police officers are not allowed legally to carry their guns. It's just been said by the Vice Chair that they don't even know that they are carrying their guns. I suggest that we fix the law, a common sense law to me, and allow this to happen, because number one, they're already doing it. Hopefully the attention will be brought to it after this discussion here. Maybe the press will inform our police officers that they're breaking the law because they're not allowed on campus. This to me is a no-brainer. If we'd had maybe an off-duty police officer in Connecticut or in Columbine or somewhere else, maybe it would have been a different outcome. I don't know. But I certainly do not have any problem with a police officer off-duty at a ball game, whether they're emotional or not. I trust our police officers. This is a good amendment. It's a no-brainer amendment, and it is not as broad as it was in the bill that was suggested. All it does is remove the language in the regular course of officer's duty, and it says a law enforcement officer may be on school campus anytime with his weapon. And I would urge the body to just think about this and put up a green vote for this very common sense amendment that everyone thinks is already the current law. I really urge a green vote. Thank you.
The gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pardon my cold. As many of you know, I'm a retired Baltimore County police officer, and I can tell you, when I was off duty, I was also expected to always be on duty. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'll tell you a quick story. My wife and I one day were walking past the local elementary school by my home. 3 or 4, it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the summertime. I watched 2 young kids crawl out of the school window. Now, I did not have my weapon with me, but I had to take action because I was required as a Baltimore County police officer to take action. I wish I had my weapon with me. What I did was run back to my house, call 911, the police got there, and we ended up apprehending the young men. So, it says to me, this is a common sense thing, folks. make sure that police officers off duty have that ability to be on that campus to take care of any situation that could arise. I was a PTA president. I certainly was in school. I went on school trips with my children, and the teachers wanted me to make sure I had my weapon with me when we were going to different places throughout the state of Maryland, wherever the school trip was. So I would implore you to please do some common sense here and put this amendment, and agree on this amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman from Harvard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure my good friend from Prince George's County was speaking in the heat of the moment and couldn't possibly have meant that we would feel threatened in any way by police officers. My children played multiple sports, baseball, soccer, wrestling, indoor, outdoor, and I felt safe with their teammates, parents there that were armed. If there was ever anything that went down, I knew we would be taken care of. I think another member on the floor said it best earlier. The best answer to a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Let's let our good guys have their gun.
Gentleman from Montgomery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have as a teacher, no concerns whatsoever with a law enforcement officer on duty or off duty having a weapon. But I'm still voting red on this amendment. Here's why. Because I don't think it's clear enough about how that law enforcement officer would identify himself. So here's my concern. The law enforcement officer who's off duty comes on high school ground. He's got a uniform, but he's carrying a weapon. As an educator, I see somebody on school grounds with a weapon, and I immediately have to notify my administration. We go on a code, we lock down the school, we call the police department, all instruction stops. We have the kids huddled in a corner of the classroom. There's no way for me to know if that police officer is indeed a police officer. There's no way for me to know unless I go up to him and ask him for a badge. And if it's somebody I don't recognize, I'm not going up to a gun and saying, hey, can I see a badge? So while I think the gentleman raises an important point, it's a point that I think would bear more discussion. And I would invite the gentleman to discuss it with the Education Subcommittee, because I think this is an important issue as schools are modifying their emergency management plans and figuring out how to deal with potential active shooter situations in schools right now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Baltimore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to go ahead and give the other side of the educational debate here. First of all, I think that might be true. We are going to go on lockdown if you see a gun. We are going to follow those procedures. But as an educator, we're going to stick to what we know best. And I'm going to trust the law enforcement professionals to do what they know best. And I know my colleague from Baltimore County, I'm sure they're not going to be coming into a school pulling out a gun, whether they're on duty or off duty. And the question was asked earlier, do we want more guns on campus? No, I don't want more guns on campus. But we have student resource officers in all of our high schools and middle schools in Baltimore County. I know that's true in many places around the state. And I can tell you what, parents, many teachers that I work with feel safer and better because we have law enforcement officers roaming our campuses. This is a common sense amendment. We should all be voting green, and I urge your support. Thank you.
On the amendment, all fair to the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. No. Roll call.
Mr. Speaker.
As everyone reported, change. Okay.
First on TV.
Speaker. Yes.
I would ask everyone, stand please. Genesis, amendment from Hartford.
Mr. Speaker.
Young lady from Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. This amendment is similar to the last one. I'm hoping we can get one more vote strong. The gentlelady from the subcommittee on Ways and Means Education talked about local control. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. So this amendment I'm going to read to you, we're going to go right along the same vein, I'm not going to re-argue all the points. It's amendment number 103426/1.
Amendment 1.
So we consider it a reading amendment. This amendment authorizes a local school system, excuse me, Mr. Speaker. This is important. This amendment authorizes a local school system to create a certain exception to the prohibition against carrying a weapon on public school property. It basically gives local control to the local school system that they may exempt off-duty law enforcement officers from the provisions of this section. It's the same argument as we had just a moment ago, that instead of being statewide, it just allows each local jurisdiction from Garrett County to the Eastern Shore to make a determination in their local communities, with their school boards, whether or not they want to allow this exception, which we all know is happening anyway, because people are ignorant of the law. I will remind the body, if there are a number of us that have served on school boards around the state, I'll remind the body that a decade or so ago, 2 decades ago, this body, before we were here, put forth a law that will disallow, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, this body put forth a law decades ago that disallowed communication devices on school property. Decades ago, because of a problem we have with the drug trade and beepers. And I remember being on the school board, and Montgomery County School Board came to us and said, we've got to get rid of this law because people want to use cell phones. We had a statewide ban on any communication devices in the state of Maryland. You couldn't have a laptop, you couldn't have cell phone, of course we didn't have those back then. So this body decided to overturn that and allow local jurisdictions to make the determination, one district at a time, based on Montgomery County leading the charge on that. And what happened? Many were very resistant to that. They didn't want these communication devices on school campuses. But one county at a time overturned that, and we now allow all 24 jurisdictions because the locals decided what they needed was best for their school system. Can you imagine today if we still had a ban on electronic communication devices in our schools? It would be a disaster. This is the same thing. Let the local school system may exempt off-duty law enforcement officers from the provisions of this section. It is a local control issue, as the good lady mentioned earlier, and I believe that that would be the best way for our school districts to have all the tools in the toolbox of what the governor is trying to do is make our schools safer. There are many things that need to occur, and this is just one of them. So I urge the body, listen to the arguments that happen before you. We need one more vote to overturn that. And let your local school district, let my local school district make this determination. This is enabling legislation that just allows, it's the same as the one before, except it authorizes 24 jurisdictions to make this determination on their own. Mr. Speaker, I move the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, actually, unfortunately, I would ask that the body reject this amendment, partly because under criminal law, section 4209, regulation of weapons and ammunition, there is actually a state preemption, and it says that except as otherwise provided, state preempts the right of a county, municipal corporation, or state or special taxing district to regulate the purchase, sale, transfer, manufacture, repair, ownership, possession, entry, and transportation of a handgun, rifle, or shotgun. So under the provision of state law, current law, we cannot necessarily let the local subdivision or county make any provisions regarding the possession of or provisions regarding weapons. So I would ask the body to reject this amendment.
Well, that's exactly what this amendment will do, is to override that wrong state law. And then now, this legislature, if you pass this amendment, will say, counties, we're going to allow you to now make that decision at the local level. We're going to override that wrong state law, and that's exactly what we have the power to do here today. Think about it, folks. You're going to walk out of here today, and you're going to say, I'm going to leave those little children all gathered in a place where they can't protect themselves, and say that the people that we've trained and paid to protect them, that they have to be closest, and they're off duty, can't do anything to help them. This was about a horrible incident where children were attacked in a school. And what we're saying by rejecting this amendment is, we're going to put children in that very position. This is a great amendment. It will allow, if you don't have the willingness, or you don't like firearms, or you don't trust the police, this will allow those who do, and do want to have their children protected, and do have faith in the police, and do have faith in their ability to protect the children, to make a decision for themselves. All we're asking is, get out of our lives, and let us make our decisions at a local level that we think are best for us and our children. It's a good amendment.
On the amendment, the young lady from the Eastern.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this amendment. Our local jurisdictions know what works locally. They know who is trusted. They know what they need. And I think this is an opportunity to give our local jurisdictions that courtesy, that they have another tool in the toolbox that they can use, and I would support this local effort.
Mr. Speaker.
The young lady from Montgomery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In speaking against this amendment, a lot of discussion about the local authority, but in terms of local control, the one group that comes before us in the Ways and Means Committee, speaking most about local authority of school districts, is the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. And they believe that this amendment and this idea of being proposed here is a bad idea based on their testimony on House Bill 397. And again, their arguments are that the things that we're already doing are good enough. We should wait for the School Safety Center to come out with these the right ideas, the best ideas, and we should not rush prematurely. And they also believe that current law already provides the school system the ability to have people on campus, like the school resource officers, who are armed. So we don't need this amendment. The schools already have this capability. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. I thank you, good lady. I used to be a very, very active member of MAID, Maryland Association of Boards of Education, and I can assure you that they did not take a position on this amendment. They took a position on school resource officers being mandated in all of our schools. If you would ask our local boards of education if they voted on this in their legislative committee, I will assure you that they did not. Because they believe, as I think all the others believe, that we already allow this, and in the law it is not allowed. I can tell you that is the case. And if you can tell me that those board of education members voted on this bill, I will tell you that is not accurate. I do not believe that that occurred. I understand the school resource officer bill, why they took the position or what they did, but this legislation, first of all, they only meet once a month. This legislation has never been in front of you to take a position to allow law enforcement officers to be on school property. And I just know how they operate. And I can assure you that they did not take a position on this legislation to allow local control in school districts, because they would. I do not believe that they would do that. So I'd like to get that straightened out before you speak for me, because they don't operate like you just suggested. And I know that from the fact that I was on their legislative committee for many years. This is a local control issue. If the school districts don't want it, if Montgomery County does not want to allow their local law enforcement officers when they're off duty in their schools, they should basically tell them that they're not allowed in there like they are already. But in Garrett County, they have different needs. In Montgomery County, they have different needs. In Carroll County, we have different needs. Carroll County does not have any school resource officers. We have one in our entire county. We put our money in the classroom with our teachers. We have our sheriff's department and our state police that are involved with our schools. They come in all of the time. I'm sure they don't know they're not supposed to be there off duty either. Let the local school districts decide. Give them the courtesy of having this decision made at the local level. And please, I will check tomorrow with May. I will assure you that their legislative committee did not take a position on what this amendment does with local control. Thank you very much. I please urge you, for all the arguments that we had earlier, to support this legislation. It is common sense. No one has to do it. But if your school district wants to do it, they can make that choice at the local level, along with all the other choices they're going to have to make regarding school safety in the next coming months and years. This is serious stuff. And we should give them every tool they need in the toolbox. The governor wanted school resource officers. We've got off-duty policemen that want to be there now. Let people decide what they want to do in their communities. I urge a green vote on this. Thank you.
Statement from Allegheny.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Approximately 3 weeks ago on a Monday, I met with the Allegheny County Board of Education, the Allegheny County Commissioners, the Mayor and Council from Cumberland, the Sheriff of Allegheny County, the Barracks Commander with Maryland State Police of Lauderdale. We had the Police Chief of Cumberland. We had the Police Chief of Frostburg. They implored me to support this legislation. We're a poor county. We have a limited amount of manpower, but we're kind of spread out. And by having these officers in the schools, whether or not the officer is going there to escort their child to and from school, whether or not they're driving by in a cruiser, off duty, and see something, and they exit the vehicle and come on premises, they're a force multiplier. They're present. And just think what would have happened in Newtown had that crazy individual been confronted by a father coming out of school, a police officer, an armed police officer. 26 people would be alive today. Think about it. This is enabling legislation. It's not statewide. We're asking you, for God's sake, how can you tell my county who wants this, we're going to deny it to you? What happens if we don't do this? And what happens if a tragedy like a Newtown occurs? And we come back to you and say, we told you so. Come on, step up. Please, thank you.
Gentleman from Montgomery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the argument on the previous amendment was that we need more clarity about the carrying of weapons by off-duty police officers, and I think we do need more clarity. I don't think the last amendment provided the type of full-scope clarity I'd like to see, but this one actually would make the situation worse, because what it would create is a situation where more than 20 local jurisdictions would have more than 20 different policies, or lots of different policies, on this question. And particularly in situations like we have in Montgomery County, where many of our law enforcement officers might work in Montgomery County, but live elsewhere, or vice versa. I think this just creates a confusing situation. What we need to do as a body is come up with a single policy that makes sense for how off-duty police officers should be able to carry their weapons in the public interest, and do so in a way that is easily understandable by them, how they interact with the school, and how they make known that they are a law enforcement officer and are allowed to carry appropriate weapons. So I'm going to vote red on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I am pretzel in this thing. I got to tell you, it's amazing to me. Now, can you imagine how Moses must have felt every time he went to Pharaoh? He kept saying, "What's it gonna take? What's it gonna take? Montgomery County, let my people go."
On the amendment, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, and then